Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
Oh, meanwhile, I just realized this was like the best weekend of the year, the Grand Prix weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the Grand Prix is a sport, and this is a sports show, so do we need to talk about it?
I have no idea who won. I have no idea who was in it.
Neither do I. I guess we're done talking about it.
That was the Grand Prix segment.
Yeah. That was the preview and the recap.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, so there's no phone call today. I didn't call you. You didn't call me because I'm here. I'm actually in Montreal.
It's always great to have you here in the basement studio.
I flew in on, what's the name of that really fast airplane that can get to Europe in an hour?
The Concorde?
Yeah, I flew in on the Concorde this morning just to record this episode.
Oh, yeah. Like, there's the Concorde. First of all, I don't think the Concorde flies anymore. And, yeah, there's one from Toronto.
Yeah, it only took about 7 minutes.
Oh, that was so great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
It was great.
Yeah, because today's such an important day with the 100th episode.
I was gonna take the helicopter here, the office helicopter that we have, but you don't have a landing pad on the roof of your house.
Right.
So this is why I had to take the Concorde.
Gotcha. It actually worked out so perfectly with this 100th episode. Everything kind of fell into place. You know, the NHL and NBA seasons ended.
Yeah.
We have like actually nothing to talk about going on in sports up until last night when something happened. And then you were coming in to Montreal exactly at the right time to do the 100th episode today. So
Yes.
it's like, I don't think it could have worked out more perfectly.
It all worked out very perfectly. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. So we're just going to, it's going to be a different episode than normal. We're going to recap the last 99 episodes. And I'll let the listeners in on a secret. There actually have been more than 99 episodes. We only released 99 episodes, but I think we actually recorded like 102 or 103.
Well, depends how you figure it, right? Definitely look, so like a little bit of like behind the scenes. So when you're launching a podcast, you read up on stuff and then people say you should submit to iTunes with at least 2 or 3 episodes, like right in one shot. So that's what we wanted to do. And then of course we didn't know what we were doing. So we recorded one episode and then we didn't like it, so we wanted to redo it. And then we redid it. The sound was all screwed up. So then we redid it again. And then in the end, we just completely scrapped it and started over with a completely new episode. And once we figured out how to like get better quality recordings, I mean, even that took like 20 something episodes till we changed how we recorded and everything. So like, all it is to say is that it's been like a wild ride, and I love doing the podcast every week or twice a week sometimes. And it's like hard to imagine that we got to 100.
We've perfected the sound quality.
Yeah.
That is perfect.
Yeah.
I've listened to many other podcasts, and ours has the best sound quality.
I told you.
As for the content of the show, I don't know if we've perfected that part, but the sound quality is excellent.
Well, I mean, actually, as you know, I listen to tons of podcasts, right? And then, I listen to like the whole like Bill Simmons Ringer Network and ESPN and, like big entities with lots of money and professional gear. And sometimes I'm just listening to like those podcasts and I'm like, why does the sound suck?
Yeah.
Why couldn't they get this guy to call in properly? How come ours sounds better? So that always baffles me. Like you said, as for the content, it's always, I think it's the next 100 episodes, episode 101 to 200 will be like a work in progress, just like the first 100 were.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't prepare, or we do very little preparation, for 2 reasons. Part of it is because we're lazy or too busy.
We have full-time jobs.
Yeah, with regular stuff. But also to keep the spontaneity. So usually we come in with, lately we've perfected our format the last 20 episodes or so where, you come prepared with a little bit of a list of things you want to talk about and I come with my own list and we just go from there. And a lot of times we have the same things on our list. Sometimes we don't. But that being said, I have no list. I had no list for today. We did prepare a little bit of something for the 100th episode, kind of a look back. But in terms of like actual goings on in sports, I had like last night I was panicking. I'm like, what are we going to talk about? I have nothing to talk about other than like the 100th episode look back. I was like, there's nothing to talk about.
We don't need to talk about anything else because this is a special episode. We could have
true.
recorded this a week ago or a week from now. It wouldn't matter.
That is true. But then all of a sudden, I open up Facebook last night at around 9 o'clock and I see Alex Galchenyuk was traded for Max Domi.
The National Hockey League.
So that provided like a little bit of like back and forth on social media with some friends and fellow Habs fans and going back and forth, so that was fun.
Marc Bergevin is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh.
By that I mean...
It's unreal.
He creates news.
Yeah.
I don't mean that he makes good trades.
No, he creates news.
He creates news.
Yeah, you're right.
I honestly think that Bergevin thinks he's playing fantasy hockey and he just likes to make as many trades as possible. Because the trades that he makes, you don't see them in the real world.
You don't.
You see them in fantasy hockey all the time.
You don't. You're so right.
He once actually made a comment at a press conference where a reporter asked him, have you tried to acquire, I don't know if it was Stamkos or whoever, and I think his comment was, yeah, I tried to make that trade in my Nintendo hockey yesterday or whatever the name of it.
And it didn't go through, right?
And it didn't go through.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. The Max Domi for Galchenyuk trade, I don't know if it would have went through. Subban for Weber would not have went. Well, maybe. I don't know. But so I just wanted to shout out to a couple of listeners, especially Brian Sloan out in he's in Seattle, right? And we had a little bit of he mentioned last night that he couldn't wait for us to talk about this on the podcast, hear what we're going to say. So I'm just going to kind of reiterate what I put on Facebook yesterday when we were going back and forth about this. You can debate the merits of trades, like who won a trade. I can tell you that I think Max Domi has a high upside. I can tell you that he sucks. I can tell you Galchenyuk was trouble. I can tell you that doesn't matter. Like all like the who's better, like let's put that aside and not even talk about like is it a better trade? Who won the trade? Bergevin doesn't know how to manage the assets of his team. Like when I heard about that trade last night, I was like, okay, they got Max Domi for Galchenyuk. What else did they get? Was there a second-round pick? Was there a third-round pick? Was there a player to be named later?
We'll see. I'm the player to be named later.
And then I just kept reading. I was like, there's nothing else. I was like, well, that sucks because like we acquired a guy who's at his lowest value and we gave up a pretty good guy for him. Like we should have got more.
So it's interesting because I had dinner with a friend of mine who Mitchell Fox. Had dinner
I would just reply to his tweet this morning about the trade.
Well, I had dinner with him 2 nights ago, well before this trade was even thought of.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen Mitchell in like 5 years. Something like that. It's been a long time. So we had a lot of catching up to do. And Mitch is the most optimistic Habs fan that I know.
I see.
Because I used to see him every week when we played hockey together and we'd always chat about the Habs and he would always be optimistic and he would always give the team the benefit of the doubt if they made this move or if they were on a losing streak or whatever. And on Thursday when I saw him, we were talking about the Canadiens and I was not very high on the Canadiens and I said what I've said to you many times, I think they should just blow it up and start all over again. Because they're not going anywhere with this roster as it exists today.
Yeah.
This was before the trade.
Well, they didn't get better.
And one of the things I said to Mitch was I actually really like Alex Galchenyuk. He's probably the most skilled offensive player on the team.
Yeah.
And they should not trade him at any cost. And Mitch agreed with me.
And then lo and behold, that's who they trade.
Yes, 24 hours later.
They have this fixation with, like, Bergevin said it at the end of your press conference. Players that have the right attitude. That's, like, very important to him. But, like, that's all well and good. You need players with a great attitude. You need players with a great work ethic. You need, like, players that are coming with a winning attitude. But, like, you need talent before that. You need skill before that. Like you need to have a good team, and then you can work on all the rest, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, every team's got bad apples. That's fine, and I don't even think that Galchenyuk was a bad apple. No. I think that they didn't handle him properly.
They haven't handled anybody properly. They don't know how to handle anything.
And I read this online last night. when they changed coaches and Julien came in, people were saying, this might give Galchenyuk a new lease on life. And were they going to try him at center? And they did for 2 periods.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to actually try him at center,
Yeah.
then let him play for a few games, not 2 periods, or don't try him at all.
All Habs fans are hoping right now that he's going to play center in Arizona and he's going to do well. Like, that's what everybody wants to see. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen. As for Max Domi, I guess we'll see. Like, I like the kid. He was great in junior. I loved him watching him play for Team Canada in the World Junior. He was fantastic. He's sort of like my son said it last night when the trade came through. He's kind of like a Gallagher, which we already have. Maybe he's more skilled and Gallagher's more heart, but whatever.
One of the other things, so the Canadians are lacking offensive talent, obviously. They're also lacking size.
Yeah.
And in this trade, they got smaller. They didn't get bigger.
No. Exactly. They got it's just the whole thing doesn't make sense, honestly.
And the Coyotes were trying to get rid of Domi for the last 6 months.
That's what
they
would
have given him up for a bag of pucks.
That's what I was saying. Like, they got a guy who 2 years ago had a decent value, but he's gotten worse every year he's been in the NHL. His value's at his lowest. That's not the time where you trade Galchenyuk. This is the time you could have got Max Domi for much less.
What I didn't like, I read something online yesterday. People were saying that it's possible that Domi's numbers were low because of the team that he's been playing on. But
that's BS, by the way.
But you could say that about Galchenyuk.
Yes,
his numbers are low because of the team he was playing on.
The Canadians were one of the worst teams in the league last year.
Exactly.
They weren't better than Arizona. They were just as bad. Well, Arizona was really, really bad. But
I think Arizona beat Montreal head to head.
It was pretty close. Like
no. I mean when they played each other.
Oh, we always lose to Arizona.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that was like a little bit of venting. When we started the show, episode number 1 was called Podcast Therapy. It was like a way to get stuff off our chest out into the world via podcasting. So that's just what we did with the Canadians. So we compiled like a kind of timeline of our first 100 episodes, things that happened in our show and also things that happened in like the world of sports in general.
First 99 episodes.
Yeah, well, first 99, you're right. This is 100th. So do you want to like go through it or?
Go ahead, mention them.
So like you mentioned, we started this in the fall of 2016. Basically, we had thought about doing a podcast for maybe 5 years. And we should have. I wish we started 5 years ago.
Oh, we should have totally started.
Or more now, it's 7 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
But at one point we just said, let's just do it. Like when you go on any kind of podcasting like group on Facebook, whatever, people are like, I want to start a podcast. What advice can you give me? And the answer is always just go for it. So that's what we kind of decided to do. So, I mean, technically, I don't know the exact date, but I looked it up like on the website and on iTunes. So November 3rd, 2016 is episode number 1. And at that time, we called ourselves the Skip and Josh Sports Show, not realizing that name is kind of a tongue twister.
But this was recorded in like October. or maybe even September.
Yeah.
I mean, we released it in November, but it was definitely recorded a month earlier, I think.
I remember all those first episodes, all we talked about was the baseball playoffs. The Cubs were playing the Indians. And the Cubs were playing the Indians in the World Series, but the Cubs had the championship series that were going on. There was so much like baseball talk in those episodes. It was great, we had so much stuff to talk about, and I remember like we could have gone on and on for like 2 hours talking about baseball.
Well, that's like one of the busiest months in the year.
Yeah.
September, October, is a good time for sports, and also March, April is
that's
also
for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, of all the topics that we talk about, when you think about all the 4 major sports, plus the other random topics that we talk about, like World Cup, Olympics, CFL sometimes, soccer, whatever, my favorite thing to talk about is baseball. I feel like I could talk about it forever, especially during, like, I've said it, I'm going to repeat myself for the millionth time, I don't know how many times I've said this, that like 6 weeks of the baseball playoffs or however long it is so great. Like right now, I don't know what's going on in baseball. I'm not following it at all. I mean, I look at the standings, I see who's hitting homers, I know the Red Sox and Yankees are both doing really well, but like when I will start to follow it more during the summer because it's the only thing that's going to be on. But like the playoffs are so good, right? You know,
The playoffs are good, and also one of my favorite episodes, I'm sure it's one of your favorite episodes, was when we went to Cooperstown, which was also about baseball.
yeah, that was well, we're going to get to that. It's further down the list. That was last summer. I forget what episode it is. I'll tell you when we get to it in the timeline. So, you know, we released our first few episodes, and then in November 2016, the Cubs won the World Series for the first time in 108 years.
They were just waiting for us to start a show for them
Right.
to actually win a World Series.
Exactly.
That's what it was.
Well, because we needed
They
to
owe
talk
a
about
lot
it.
of thanks to us.
They do, yes. And then November 24th, 2016, we did our first episode with a guest, which was our buddy Costa Canellis from Chicago. And it was just perfect because, you know, he's a transplanted Montrealer living in Chicago. He's been there quite a while already. And they just got wrapped up in the whole Cubs mania that's going on there, you know, like, and so he came on and told us all about, you know, what it was like to be in Chicago during that crazy playoff run. And then from there, we had a few other guests. We started to do like what's going on in different cities. So we had our buddy Mike from Atlanta, and then Mark from Philadelphia that came on in December. And then in December, well, let's go back to the guests. We haven't had that many guests. Like, we started off really hot with the guests and bringing them on. We have guests on from time to time.
I actually don't like having guests on our show. Now that we've done 99 episodes and we've done, I don't know, 9 of them with guests or whatever it was,
Yeah.
I don't like having guests on the show. With all due respect to all of you out there, the guests that we've had, you're all excellent people, and I love all of you. And I would love to have dinner with you or whatever you would like, or lunch,
Yeah.
or go to a game with you, or go to Cooperstown with you. But I don't like having guests on the show because then it requires our show to be structured. And the best thing about the show normally is that there's no structure to it at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then I actually have to think and plan, and I don't want to do any of that thinking or planning.
But I mean, I agree. When I listen back at some of the episodes with the guests, especially, there's a few that we're so stiff. It's so serious. It sounds like a regular radio show, and that's the opposite of what we want the podcast to be, right? So yeah, we're gonna have more guests. I mean, we're definitely gonna have guests. It's gonna happen because we kind of like it sometimes, but we're gonna have to figure out how to do it better, I think, you know.
Yeah, maybe we do it in person. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, I'm going to mention that in a second. So in December 31st, 2016, we did our first annual awards show. We've done that already a couple of times. And we talked about like the best team of the year, the best play of the year. I mean, for me, that year was runaway was the Cubs, you know, and actually I think you picked the Golden State Warriors as the team of the year because they were so dominant. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
It's not a bad pick, the Warriors.
No, it wasn't a bad pick. And then we picked like our favorite song of the year. And to this day, I still can't like wrap my head around the fact that like I had never heard your song before and you had never heard my song before. So that just kind of...
That could happen every year.
That kind of tells you like where we're coming at musically, right? In January 8th, 2017, Canada lost the World Junior Hockey Championships in a shootout to the United States. I put this in the list here because I remember I felt so strongly about it at the time. I was like, God damn it, that stupid shootout. What a bad way to end a championship and everything. And like,
It was exciting.
it was exciting, but like I had completely forgotten about it until I looked back at the 100 episodes and realized, oh my God, we spent the whole episode talking about the stupidity of the shootout, you know? So it's kind of weird, like, but it's like we got over it because I didn't even remember about it, right? In January of 2017, we had more your friend, but friend of the show, Joseph de Benedictis. He came on and he gave us a whole episode about Buffalo and gave us some really cool stories about what it was like to travel with the Buffalo Sabres on their private jet and all the free food and cool stuff and how it seems cool, but really it's just, you know.
Actually, it is cool.
It is cool, but I mean, I think you get over it kind of quickly, right? February 2017, we had a really cool episode, again with guests, with Mike from Atlanta and Neil, who was like our resident Patriots fan. That was one of my favorite episode titles. I always have trouble naming the episodes. Not always, but sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And this one was called Brady versus the Brotherhood, which seemed like such a great title for a Super Bowl preview. And then, the next episode, we were both flabbergasted about how the Falcons completely blew that game.
I was so pissed about that game. I was so pissed about that loss.
I mean, there's so many Patriot haters out there. I don't think you're a Patriot hater necessarily.
I am. 100%.
Well, you're more of a Belichick
That's
hater,
true.
right? But God damn, the Falcons blew that game. When you look back now, you're like, Brady got they got a championship, but basically it was handed to them, The 2 in a row were handed to them. Because Russell Wilson threw that stupid interception. They're like,
was that 2 in a row? I thought 2 out of 3 years.
Or 2 out of 3 years, whatever. But, so that's kind of frustrating. February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2017, we had our first emergency podcast. Big news broke. I texted you. We have to record tonight.
Well, we had decided actually 2 days earlier that if Terry Ann got fired, we were going to do an episode, and it happened. So we did it.
Yeah. So it was the first emergency podcast. We titled it "It Had to Be Done." It was all about how the Canadians had fired Michel Therrien and then hired Claude Julien and the reaction to that. And when you look at our download stats, it's still one of I think it was the most downloaded episode, other than the first 3, which got huge numbers because everyone's curious about it.
Mm-hmm.
That one still stands out as a very, very popular episode. Then we did some, as things are going, we did an NHL trade deadline episode. And then March 14th, 2017 was our first March Madness. So everybody knows that listens to the show how important March Madness is to us. It's maybe, I said, it's my favorite. Baseball is my favorite thing to talk about. I think for you, it's the March Madness. I'm not 100%. Don't want to speak for you, but
it's up there. I'm not sure. Watching sports, everyone always asks me, what's your favorite sport?
Yeah.
And to watch, I think baseball is my favorite sport to watch.
Right.
Whether it's, in person or on television.
Even on television?
Well, I prefer to watch it in person, but, I don't go to games as much as I used to.
But it is too boring on television, don't you think? You can't
no,
sit and watch 9 innings, can you?
No, you can't. But I mean, the good thing about watching on television is you can do things in the meantime. You don't have to focus on it. It's not like a hockey game where you need to focus.
No.
You can go prepare food or, whatever, do laundry, who knows. And while and even though, it's on in the background, you still know what's going on.
Right. So at that same time, that March Madness, looks like we took a little. We went big on March Madness for all the weeks, during the March Madness every week, updating people on the bracket challenge and everything like that. And then we had an episode which was also very popular called "The Tale of Two Cities." This is when the Habs and the Leafs were both eliminated from the playoffs that year. And even though the teams went really exactly the same amount of playoff rounds, they got eliminated literally days apart, the feeling in the two cities was so different, right? Montreal was doom and gloom, and Toronto was so positive, and that feeling continued for the whole next season.
Yeah, and then the Canadians didn't make the playoffs the following season.
Right.
So the feeling was accurate.
Yeah. During the June of 2017, we had the NHL Finals going on with the Penguins and the Predators, and we had the Cavs and the Warriors, every year in the NBA Finals. In June 23rd, 2017, there was the NHL expansion draft, and the Vegas Golden Knights got some players at that time. Little did we know, the story that the Vegas Golden Knights were about to write the following season. The team was born, everybody said, okay, they're going to be an expansion team, they're going to be bad. And boy, oh boy, was it ever the opposite.
You know what I realized yesterday? Someone mentioned this to me, that before the expansion draft, before Vegas got any players, if you wanted to bet on Vegas winning the cup, it was 100 to 1.
I think 500.
No. It was 100 to 1. Then after they got their players, it went to 500
because
to 1.
I saw a thing on TSN or Sportsnet about 3 guys from Vegas, 3 random guys that don't know each other. They each bet a little bit of money with a 500 to 1 bet on Vegas to win the cup, and they came close. So, on July 9th, 2017, we had our first fully dedicated episode to music. So, again, Joseph DeBenedictis, our friend from Toronto, gave us a whole U2 episode. What it's like to be a super U2 fan and going to the crazy concerts.
He went to 2 of them, I think.
Yeah,
he went in Buffalo and in Toronto.
Yeah. and we ranked our favorite U2 songs. And I think like we should do more music episodes. I'd like to.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
It's funny because we just looked back at this before we started recording. July 25th and July 28th, we had 2 episodes dedicated to What's Bugging Josh. What Bugs Me, What's Bugging Josh Part 1 and 2. As you know, like fans of the show know that like we have a segment called What's Bugging Me. It's mostly things that are bugging you.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then I kind of add one of my own.
I'm surprised there were only 2 episodes because I have so many things that bug me that we could just do like a whole season of just that.
Well, like Joe, like I don't want to spill the beans, but like Joe wants to do a whole TV show about you called What Bugs Me.
I would love that.
So we're gonna get into some What Bugs Me's after, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But just like, I mean, it's something that we did in episode 1, and it's still something that we're gonna do in episode 100. So it's like it's gonna stay. You know,
it's not going anywhere.
No.
It's everyone's favorite part of the show.
Yeah. Another episode that got a lot of attention, a lot of downloads, and a lot of buzz on Facebook and Twitter was episode 50, Skip and Josh Go to Cooperstown.
The midway point.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I still might try to go this year. Neil, if you're listening, I might contact you to see if you're going this year to see Vlad get inducted. Did you have anything to say about Cooperstown? I know at the time you said you'll never go to an induction again, so I didn't even bother asking you.
I won't go to an induction. I had a good time. I mean, I'm glad that I went, and going to Cooperstown is fun, but it's better to go, any other week other than the day of the inductions.
Yeah.
Because first of all, there's so many people there. It's impossible to move around. There's no hotels to be found anywhere near there.
Right.
And then for the ceremony itself, I mean, you're just standing around watching people make speeches and you're literally baking in the hot sun.
Tim Raines was like literally a speck in the distance. We were so far away,
Yeah.
right? I mean, yes, it's fun just to be there. I would consider going back for the induction, but I mean, I wouldn't never hesitate if someone would say, hey, do you want to go to Cooperstown any time of year just to go see the Baseball Hall of Fame and to hang out in Cooperstown? Yes, I'm there.
Now, if we would have gotten invited to the private Tim Raines party, that would be a different story. That I might be interested in.
Now, we were angling for that.
But it didn't work out.
No. I mean, look, I'm pretty sure we mentioned it on the episode. We met Jonah Carey. My goal was to meet Jonah Carey.
So you satisfied your goal.
And then there he was talking to us. And
Have you finished reading that book that I gave you
a
year ago?
It's right there. You can see the bookmarks like halfway through.
Okay.
And Mike, who was with us in Cooperstown, he was really like pushing, I think, to try to get like an invite to some private party. And Jonah was honest with us. He's like, look, I'd love to invite you guys. I just can't, so. That's
too many
the way,
people. It's
too
fine.
Many people, yeah. So September 3rd, 2017, we did our NFL preview with Neil Schnurback. It seems like Neil, I don't have to count. We know he's been the guest the most, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has.
Yeah.
Because he knows the most stuff. He knows the most. He knows more than all our guests combined. He knows more than you and I combined.
Yeah, and the thing is, the sport that
and he's only one person.
The sport that he knows the most about, we never talk about, which is golf.
Yes. Well, we shouldn't talk about golf.
No, but like he said, if you ever want to do a fantasy golf show, have him on. I'm like,
well, if we ever do, he's the guy we're going to.
Yeah, he should start his own fantasy golf podcast.
He has his own website.
Yeah. Continuing. So then we actually had our first, what I would consider real guest. I don't want to use the word real, but an actual hockey writer who covers the NHL for a living, not just a hobbyist like us. That's David Alter. And he previewed the upcoming NHL season for us. And he was right on with most of what he was saying. I remember, I can remember to this day, he was like, Tampa Bay's going to be strong. Toronto's going to be a good team, but I don't know how far they're going to go because the goaltending and the defense and the Canadians weren't going to be good. And yeah, that's all true, Obviously, there's not one single person in the world that predicted the Vegas Knights were going to win and go do what they did. So anybody who tells you that they predicted the Vegas Knights were going to be in the Stanley Cup final or even be in contention in the West at the beginning of the year is just blowing smoke. No?
David Alter is very smart. He knows his hockey up and down, forwards and backwards.
November 2017, we did our big crossover episode with Matt and Phil, also known as the Smart Guys, from the Semi-Intellectual Musings podcast. That was really a fun day, actually. Like we recorded for hours.
It was exhausting.
Yeah, we recorded for hours because we did 2 episodes.
We had no craft services. I was very hungry the whole day. I remember.
So we recorded 1 episode that went on their podcast and another one that went on our podcast. So the one that went on ours was called we called it We're Not Sports Snobs, because they said we like you guys because you're not sports snobs. And we talked about a variety of subjects, and we did an episode which is probably, you were talking about your favorite episode. So like for me, it's like Skip and Josh Go to Cooperstown. I think that's my favorite. But I don't want to say that my favorite episode is an episode that was on another show's feed. But the Tragically Hip episode that we did with those guys was tremendous.
It really was. I actually did some research and work preparing for that one, because I had to like rank my hip songs, which was impossible to do.
Right.
But yes, the end result turned out really good.
Yeah. So you were mentioning, well, I mean, Matt and Phil have both reached out to me separately on social media about further collaboration. So we're supposed to have Matt on to do a whole episode about concussions, which is really in the news now because there's a lot of stuff breaking about the testimonies of the NHL owners and NHL executives about what they know about concussions, which seems to be a lot of, they say they know nothing, which I find hard to believe, but that's a whole episode for another show.
They have to say they know nothing because they don't want to get sued.
Right.
So.
And Phil, also from the Semi-Intellectual Musings, reached out to me separately saying he was going to be in Montreal at the end of June if I wanted to record in person. I was like, whoa, in person? That means he's coming here into this little space.
into your fancy high-tech studio.
Yeah. Hopefully, I'd actually like to have him into the studio because he could probably show me a thing or two about like some technology.
I like your setup as it
It's
is.
fine. November 2017, I was in Toronto, and the Astros and Dodgers gave us a great World Series. I remember...
I don't remember you being in Toronto.
I was in Toronto. We went to eat at Wayne Gretzky's restaurant.
Oh, that was during the World Series?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
I remember you being there, but I remember it being warm. I wasn't even wearing a jacket, if I
It was
recall.
the first cold days. Like, I got to Toronto, I was like, whoa, it's winter here. Because in Montreal, it was not cold yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the whole global warming thing that I talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah, everything's changed now.
Yeah.
Everything's pushed a month out.
Exactly, or 2.
Or 2. December 2017 was a very special episode. Was a very special episode in a bad way for me. I called it That's My Quarterback. That's when Carson Wentz went down with his season-ending injury. Like, the way things played out with the Eagles in our household was unbelievable this year. It was like highs and lows, and then, of course, the ultimate high at the end. You know?
There were tons of injuries to very important players all over the NFL this past season.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like J.J. Watt, Deshaun Watson, and it'll happen again.
And the NBA, same thing. A lot of important players got injured in the NBA as well.
December 30th, 2017, we did our second annual year-end awards. This time we were a little bit more familiar with each other's songs.
I don't think you knew my song.
No, maybe not, right? But you knew mine. I don't remember what it was.
I don't remember either.
Okay, forget it. January 2018, like crazy stuff in the NFL playoffs. Stephon Diggs with that crazy touchdown against the Saints. It's like, still don't know how the Vikings pulled that off.
More a mistake by the cornerback than anyone else.
Nick Foles with like just torching the Vikings, and then the Patriots in the Super Bowl again. You know. And
they're going to be back again this year, probably.
I don't know. There's all these rumors that Gronkowski's asking for a trade and
whatever. He's going to be there, and they're going to be in the Super Bowl again. Hopefully they lose.
February 6th was a great episode called Fly, Eagles, Fly. Just a celebration of the Philadelphia Eagles season. And, like, my son still wears all his Eagles Super Bowl merchandise very proudly, even to this day. Now we're getting into, like, almost now. Like, we're catching up to, like, we're almost caught up to episode 100. March 4th was the NHL trade deadline almost, and the Plekanec got traded to the Leafs, and the Habs were just going down the toilet. We talked about that a lot.
That was a good trade for the Leafs. He helped them out.
He did help them, yeah. Then we were into our second March Madness, where we did the second annual Skip and Josh March Madness extravaganza. Again with Neil and Rob, Rob Bobot, who's our resident March Madness expert. And I guested on another show on the Pop Culture Cosmos podcast talking about March Madness. It was a very memorable day for me doing that because I was on a business trip in Orlando and I recorded these 2 podcasts from my room. And the March Madness podcast that we did was really long and complicated with 2 guests. And yet we still managed to pull it off, you know?
You're good at multitasking.
Sometimes.
You know, actually, we have to rewind a little bit because I don't remember. I think it was in October that I was in Montreal and we recorded an episode, but I wasn't here in your studio. I was in Montreal in a hotel and we recorded an episode.
That's right. You're like, I'm going to be in Montreal, but I'm going to bring my mic because we're going to record separately. Then, of course, you know, episode 84, Busted Brackets. That's when Virginia screwed everybody's bracket by being the first number 1 seed to lose to a 16 seed. And then we're almost caught up, right? April 2017, Villanova won. And then Josh made up his own rules in the bracket challenge and gave the first place prize to who he felt like. And then, you know, we've been going on since then with the NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs. That's where we took us all the way up to episode 100.
Well, there you go. That's it. What a recap.
That's like, so like I said, like my favorite episodes are the Tragically Hip, Going to Cooperstown. Do you have like favorites or did you mention it?
So those 2 plus the Michel Therrien firing was another one.
Yeah, that's great.
Any episode where I didn't have to do any research, any episode where I didn't have to have any websites open and look at stats and facts.
Actually, that Michel Therrien was great for that because literally I just turned on my computer, called you up on Skype, and like we went. I didn't like you said, no websites, no stats, no nothing. It was just like the passion of like what we had to say, you know, at the time, you know, literally like instant reaction. Like we tried to stay away from like saying, oh, we're giving you the hot takes or we're giving you the instant analysis. That's bull, you know, like we're just telling you how we feel, you know.
We also did, in one of our 99 episodes, we did a World Cup of Soccer preview. You didn't mention that.
Well, that was the last episode.
Yeah, but we did one, so it's worth mentioning.
That was episode 99. We didn't preview it that much, but I've been watching World Cup. This morning, like you asked me, what do I do? You asked me today, what do you do when you wake up so early and everyone in your house is sleeping on the weekend? Today I watched the World Cup.
You see, you know what? It doesn't really surprise me that your kids are asleep because they're teenagers and it's the summer or almost.
Yeah.
But I figured your wife would be awake at the same time as you.
It's because Thursdays and Fridays she has to wake up really early for work, like 5:30 in the morning.
Oh.
And go be somewhere like for 7 or even before. So by the time she gets to like Saturday morning, it's like her chance to sleep in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I hope we didn't wake them up.
No. My kids, I don't mind waking them up. They can wake up at 11 o'clock. No?
They should.
So we're going to get into like a little, not a special segment, but as we mentioned before, What Bugs Me is a very important segment on our show.
Things that bug me?
Something that we love to do. I think you love to like get stuff off your chest. Tell us.
TSN stole the segment from us.
They did, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like, what is it? What's bugging Ray? They totally stole it.
100%. We started it first. We have documentation to prove that we started it first.
So we're going to do, you texted me during the week and you said, on the next episode, ask me what's bugging me. I have some stuff. I'm like, okay. So before I ask you what's bugging you this week, I wanted to look back at like some of the other What Bugs Me's that we had in the first 100 episodes. Just some weird stuff. So I'm just going to list them off. Power rankings. Hate those. Tiger Woods. That's me. Power play goals. Not that you have anything against power play goals, but like
the fact that announcers highlight those as important,
right?
But it's actually easier to score a power play goal,
right?
So it should be a negative, not a positive to the player.
Between period interviews with athletes, or actually, as it turns out, it's like interviews in general.
Any interview with any athlete at any time before, during, or after a game.
Right.
Because I've yet to hear any professional athlete say anything interesting.
This is one that we had early on. Leagues punishing players with suspensions, even if the courts are saying they're innocent or the police haven't brought charges.
Yeah, if a person commits a crime, they need to be punished by the law, not by their employer.
Right. This is more me, quality of announcers. You know my, you know how I feel about like Troy Aikman. That's a big one for me.
And Glenn Healy.
Oh God, don't even start. Bad jerseys, or maybe it's too many jerseys.
It's just, especially in the NBA, every team has like 7 jerseys. So you don't even know who's who. Like there was a game where, the Raptors wear red. And there was a game the Raptors were playing against another team and the other team was wearing red. And I looked and I thought that the red team was the Raptors, but it wasn't. And that happens like all the time.
I watched that game for 2 minutes thinking that the teams were reversed.
Yeah. Because now every team has a black jersey too, right? Yeah. And really it should only be San Antonio that has a black jersey.
And how about that team that had the white jerseys with the white numbers?
That was, I think Duke did that actually once.
That was bad.
Oh, and the Bullets, not the Bullets, the Wizards.
The Wizards,
Sorry,
the Wizards, yeah.
Yeah.
There's this obsession, and it's lately, we banned, I'm not even allowed to talk about it, like, we banned the LeBron, Michael Jordan comparisons.
Yeah.
We're not talking about that,
No.
but there's this obsession with, like, trying to rank who's the greatest of all time in pro sports, like, and especially measuring them by, like, championships. Like, yeah, championships are important, but it's not everything, right?
Right, and when you're voting on MVP of a particular season, it shouldn't matter if that player was on a team that won their division or finished last in their division or won the team championship the league championship.
Yeah.
Just cover the name of the team, look at the numbers, whoever had the best numbers, that's the MVP.
Right.
End of story.
Right, because it's a phenomenon in the last at least 10 years, but maybe longer, that they can only pick an MVP from a winning team.
And right? It's actually more challenging if you're a good player on a bad team and you had a good season. That's more remarkable because you had, in theory, no one else in your lineup or on your roster to help you out.
Yeah.
And so opposing teams could key on you and yet you still had a good season.
Right.
So therefore you have even more right to be the MVP of that year.
Right. I had here MVP voting as another, but that's all combined. Some non-sports stuff, low-res highlights on big screen big screen TVs.
Yeah, I don't like to watch things on my phone. I'm not a millennial. I don't like to watch things on my phone. And so when I'm watching television and they're showing me highlights and they got the highlights from someone who recorded it on their phone and it's grainy and it's shaking. Like, what's that movie that made everyone vomit 20 years ago?
Blair Witch Project.
Yes.
I was sick from that.
Yeah, I don't want to see that on television.
No. I mean, there's one thing about, like, bringing back highlights from, like, the 80s, that, like, when they talk about the greatest plays, because they happened and there was no HD back then, that's fine. They usually letterbox it or, they zoom it, whatever. But, like, you're right, highlights on your phone? Let's save that for Instagram, Yeah. Long road trip excuses I have here.
Oh, yeah. When players or teams say, oh, yeah, well, yes, we've lost 3 out of the last 4 or 3 out of the last 6 or whatever it is, but that's because we were on a road trip. Are you kidding me? Road trip? These guys, when they go on the road, whether it's hockey, baseball, basketball, football, they live better on the road than you and me live in our own homes.
Yeah.
They have everything taken care of. They don't have to lift a bag or anything.
Yeah.
They got food coming out of wherever they want.
We know the planes are fully stocked.
Yeah, so they're never hungry.
Yeah.
The hotels they stay in are 5-star hotels. I mean, don't tell me this. Oh yeah, it was a road trip and it was tough.
Yeah. And then the last one I have is dunks as highlight of the night. That's bad.
Dunks. There's 12 dunks in every single NBA game. I don't want to see a dunk as the best play of the night.
Unless the guy's putting it through his legs or doing something really fancy.
Even still.
They can do that
like
in their sleep, right?
the whole dunk contest at the All-Star break, that should be banned. It should be abolished.
I think that the NBA, they're not going to ban it, but they do realize that it's like past its expiration date, right? Because no one really cares about the dunk contest anymore. They tried to find ways the last like 3-4 years to try to change the judging, change the format to make it more like appealing. But what else can they do? A guy jumped over a car. What's next?
I like the 3-point shooting contest. That I like because that actually requires skill.
Yeah. So that's looking back at some of like our more like famous What Bugs Me's. So on June. What's the date today?
17th?
June 16th.
16th.
2018. What's bugging you?
You're kidding me? Boy, are you bugging me, man. I'm gonna nail. Ooh, God. I'm getting bugged now. Whoa, man.
So this is a new one. So when a team wins their league, in football and baseball and basketball and hockey, they have a parade.
Yeah.
Which... that's great. You should have a parade. I think that's a fantastic thing to do. But when you win the NFL championship, what is it called?
The trophy itself?
Yes. Well, not the trophy, but like what is that team referred to as?
Super Bowl champion?
Correct.
Yeah.
And in baseball, what is that team referred to as?
World Series champion?
Correct. And in basketball,
I'm glad I'm getting these right. A lot of pressure.
right? In basketball, I don't even know this one, but
They might say NBA champion or finals champion.
Okay. And finally, in hockey, what are they referred to as?
Stanley Cup champion.
Okay. So I don't know if you watched
Wow,
any
I'm so
of
glad I got those right. My God.
They weren't hard questions. You're supposed to get them right. I don't know if you watched any of the Washington Capitals parade.
Well, no, but I heard about it.
Okay. So
I mean, if you listen to Tony Kornheiser's show like we do,
right.
That's all I've been
but
talking
you
about.
actually had to watch the parade because they had the buses were all decked out with banners, and they had banners all over the place congratulating the Capitals and telling everyone what this parade was. And if you looked, and you didn't even have to look carefully because it was
right there, yeah.
blatant on every highlight of the parade, the Washington Capitals, they were referring to them as world champions. That was number one. That bothered me a lot.
That's not
And
right.
number two, because they're not world champions, they're Stanley Cup champions.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah, yeah.
Number two, if you looked on any of the banners that were created, nowhere on the banner did it say Stanley Cup anywhere.
Really?
The picture of the Stanley Cup did not appear anywhere.
Is it because they're not allowed? That doesn't make sense.
The
They
NHL
have to be allowed.
The NHL logo did not appear anywhere.
Oh.
So they didn't call it the Stanley Cup Parade, which is what it's called.
Yeah,
And
that's what it would be called here.
and they didn't call them Stanley Cup champions, which is what they are. They called it the World Championship Parade, and they called the Capitals the World Champions, which is such an American way to do this. If it was a Canadian team that won the cup,
That's
it
'cause-
never would have been called that.
Because, I know I don't want to say bad stuff about Washington because
You can
there's-
say bad stuff about
because
Washington.
there's a lot of passionate hockey fans in Washington. They've had a team since 1974.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's not a hockey town. Hockey's not embedded in the culture of Washington. And I'm not comparing it to Montreal, Toronto, Winnipeg, any of the Canadian cities. That's given. But Minnesota, Boston,
Detroit,
Chicago, these cities have hockey in their blood, right? Washington is
But you would think that someone would have advised them when they were printing these huge banners. No, we're not world champions. We're Stanley Cup
Who
champions.
won the World Championship of Hockey this year? That stupid tournament that goes on during the playoffs?
Was it
Russia?
Sweden?
Sweden?
I don't know.
Someone won, but it wasn't the Capitals.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, that just bugged the hell out of me.
Oh, God. That's a pretty good one, actually. It's very specific. Usually it's more general.
No, I am very specific.
What else you got?
That's it.
Oh, I thought you had more than one.
Well, I mean, we talked about the trade last night, the Galchenyuk trade.
the
bugged
trade
me.
was so bad that it bugged you.
Yes, it bugged me. I could be done with the Habs.
Look,
I honestly why do you see anywhere in your future the Canadians winning a Stanley Cup?
I said this. I'm glad you brought that up. Because I said this on one episode at a certain point. I don't remember where. I'm going to tell you exactly what I said word for word because I remember it. I am in a dysfunctional relationship with this team. And I think I'm not the only one. There's so many Habs fans out there that want to love the team. Mitch Fox, you brought him up. He wants to love the team. He wants to support the team. But they make it hard. They make it so goddamn hard to be a fan of the team because they're so stupid.
And if this year
It's going to be worse. They're going to not make the playoffs again.
this past season should have proven things to every team in the league. You had two teams in the Stanley Cup Finals this year. No one would have predicted that Washington and Vegas would have met in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Well, I mean, you knew Washington was going to be a good team. You just didn't think they were going to go far because they never do.
But the point is that once you make the playoffs, anything can happen.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You just because you finish first in your conference or
Yeah.
or eighth in your conference, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is make the playoffs. It's and assembling a team. I mean, you listen to the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens and talking about how he wants to assemble his roster. He makes it seem like it's rocket science, like it's the most complicated thing. It's not that complicated. If you have good players on your roster, you keep those players.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can acquire other players,
You do.
you do.
Yeah.
But and he's not the only one. There are all the other GMs in the league.
They're in the same boat.
Who did, like, other than the GM of the Vegas Golden Knights and the Washington Capitals, all the other GMs in the league should be embarrassed.
But like the thing is with the the thing is with the Vegas Golden Knights, what I told you, it's an accident. They weren't trying to win. You know, do you think they were trying to win this year? No.
Okay, but then that just goes to show you.
It's more the coach that.
Well, not just the coach, but like, if you play proper hockey,
anything could happen.
Yes.
Yeah, you play together and.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get you.
Show close.
All right. Well, that's episode 100.
That's episode 100. I didn't get you any gift to congratulate us on the significance of the episode, so I hope you didn't get me a gift either.
I didn't. No.
Okay.
Would you like to do the show close today?
Oh man, this is nerve-wracking. Before we sign off, I just want to remind the listeners to make sure that so that you never miss an episode of the Skip and Josh podcast, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play Music, or the podcast app of your choice. I have now converted to Overcast, and I really, really like it. If you do listen via Apple Podcasts, please make sure to leave us a review. And we've heard that 5 stars is a good one. We would also love to hear from you via email, skipandjoshshow@gmail.com, via Twitter at skipandjosh, or by liking and following our Facebook page, where you can now also leave a review of our show. As always, you can get all the links that we talked about on this episode on our website, which is skipandjosh.com.
And on skipandjosh.com, you can go back and listen to any of the first 99 episodes before this.
We should quiz the listeners.
Maybe I'll post a quiz on the website with like show trivia. Like not sports trivia, show trivia.
Yeah.
And we'll see if I
Like what was Skip wearing on episode 50?
Episode 50, that was when we went to Cooperstown.
Yeah.
I was probably wearing the shirt you're wearing right now.
Well, you bought it that day, so I don't know if you were wearing it that day.
Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations on number 100.
Yes,
And
congratulations.
I'm looking forward to another 100.
Me too.
All right. Speak to you next time.
The Skip and Josh podcast is over now. Don't worry, there'll be another episode soon.